It's gonna be a long day.
I think the council looks short. Right?
What you're gonna do? I put a slight amendment. It's not, I think it shouldn't be a problem.
Good morning, everyone. Following our November meeting of Upper Thames River Conservation Authority Board of Directors. Calling this meeting to order at 9:30 for the November Upper Thames River Conservation Authority Board of Directors. I'm Dean Trentowski, your chair. As a reminder, Lee Chandler is serving as our meeting host. So if those of you online have connection problems with technology, please contact Emily through the chat feature. Today's meeting is being live streamed on the UTRCA's YouTube channel. Please refrain from whispers or side conversations while the meeting is running, as they could get picked up by the microphones. When the squares glow red, mics are muted. If you are a board member attending online, please have your camera on during the meeting, especially during voting and during the closed session when applicable. And today we will have a closed session. Have received no regrets at this point. We do have Harge, Peter, and Scotty online. Grant Inglis, our legal counsel, will be online as well. Noting Tom Heeman is absent at the present time. Should also make mention that we have visitors participating in the Conservation Authority's University program. Joining us today is Melissa from the St. Clair CA. Welcome, Melissa. Glad to have you with us. I'm sure today's session will be just as informative for you as for the rest of us here. So with that, I will turn to the territorial acknowledgement. We acknowledge that the Upper Thames River watershed is within the traditional territory of the Attawandaron, Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Luna peoples who have deep, long-standing and intrinsic relationships to the land, water, plants, and animals of southwestern Ontario. We acknowledge the First Nation communities within the Thames River watershed who are connected to and by the Thames River. These nations include Chippewas of the Thames First Nation, Oneida Nation of the Thames, Munsee Delaware Nation, and Delaware Nation of Moraviantown. In the region, there are 11 First Nation communities and a growing and diverse Indigenous urban population. We acknowledge and respect local and regional First Nations as original, temporary, and future caretakers of this watershed. And we are committed to working alongside Indigenous peoples from across the region and Turtle Island, strengthen relationships, honor treaty rights, and improve watershed health. Okay, moving to the second item on our agenda. There are some modifications to the agenda. There's a number of them here, so I'll go through them one at a time. First of all, I'm requesting a motion that the board adds the letter and resolution from Essex Region Conservation Authority and the resolution from the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry as items on the agenda under item 5.3 correspondence. Looking for a mover. Brian, seconder. George. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Second motion, we have a motion from Brian Petrie to move item 8.2 up. Item 8.2 to follow the delegation, which is presented in section 4.1.
Second.
Seconded by Sandy. Discussion. All those in favor? It's carried as well. And add item 7.3 litigation affecting the authority verbal update. Mover and seconder, please. Moved by Jean, second by Skylar. Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. So we will proceed with our agenda based on those modifications. At this time, I will ask if anyone has a pecuniary interest to declare. Noting none at this time, at any point throughout the meeting, should the need arise, please declare accordingly. All right, moving to section 4, presentations, delegations. We have with us today Mr. Mike Wallace of the London Development Institute. As a reminder that to our board members and all present, that according to our bylaws, C10(5), delegations shall be limited to a time of not more than 10 minutes. Board members may limit or extend the time allowed for a presentation by majority vote. And as a reminder, according to our administrative bylaws regarding delegations, we shall not enter cross debate with members, other delegations or staff. Any discourse between members in the delegation will be limited to members asking questions for clarification and obtaining additional relevant information only. So I will turn the floor over to Mr. Wallace. Good morning, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for indulging me today. A very active agenda here at the Conservation Committee. I'm going to speak briefly to 4 items. So let's start with 6.2, the regulated area map update in the transition protocol. Basically, an update to the protocol that's there now, I think, based on some that the 30 has gone through recently. And so we're okay with the update. We did get some feedback on it. I just wanted to let you know that there's a few things of clarity that we're like to meet with staff on to make sure that we understand the definition of significance or significant piece. And so the definition that they have developed in here, we just want to make sure we clarify on. I think and this is something we're not asking you to do anything, but something that we like to talk to staff about in terms of notification on what is significant and what isn't. And currently it goes to landowners, and we want to make sure that the protocol understands that who that involves and so on. The one thing that we see at the city, which we think the Conservation Authority could do, is that I get notices on lots of different changes that happen at the city, and it doesn't mean that we comment on them or not, but it's a heads up in a sense. And so I'm hoping that from the notification process that could be developed here at the Conservation Authority would also allow LDI to be notified if there's an update or some change, so that we can go look at it on your website or your public documents, so that we know what's happening. And the reason for that is that, does the mapping change affect particular property? Yes, but does it set a precedence for what happens elsewhere? And so we just want to be on top of that kind of change, if there is one that's being notified through this transition protocol and regular update. So we're not here to ask for any change to that report. We just want to have you as board members understand that that we do have, we want to work with staff on making sure that that process works going forward for both sides. On 6.3, and it relates to 6.1, but it's really, we were anticipating that the Thames River regulated map update for the City of London, the part of the river that goes through, that was going to be here today, and that report is not here, which is fine. We need to see it before we can comment on it, the report. In 6.1, you have an additional Conservation Authority meeting being requested for the 16th of December, which that report would then come to. That is a bit of a difficulty for us and Sandy, for example, because there's already a previously determined meeting at City Hall that's relatively important in London on development charges, which Sandy and I are both on. And so I'm politely asking that you, part of 6.1 is the agenda, as the dates for next year's meetings. The next one is, the first one in the year is, I think, the 26th. of January. I'm asking that that report be referred to that meeting so that we can. It's a very vital, important report for our association, for the industry in general, and so we need to be here for it and hopefully delegate to it. So that I know you're getting a verbal update on. So one of the important things today was the moved it up on the agenda. I'm not sure. 8.1, the planning and permitting basically the service delivery aspects. It's a very good report, relatively long. We just got it on Wednesday, of course, that's when it becomes public. And so I've got some feedback from my group, but in general, all we want to do is be on the record that's saying, I know you're receiving it today. We would want to work with staff here at the Conservation Authority to work out the actual, how we're going to resolve some of the recommendations that are there in terms of service delivery and service delivery improvements. We just want to be on the record that we're happy to be at the table for that. And I think we should be to help implement that paid for. But it was on our initial reading of it, it's a very good report. We appreciate you guys, the Conservation Area Board, directing staff to have that study done, and we were happy to be participants. My final item is, I'm not sure what you would say about it, but we are carefully looking also at 8.2, the provincial announcements, which make significant changes to the Conservation Authority system in Ontario. Frankly, we don't have a position on it currently. It's a big picture item. It's a very significant change that they're out consulting on, and we haven't sent in any, but I'm interested to hear what the discussion around the table is on what's going to have to do. Conservation authorities in Ontario go from 36 to 9, and thoughts are on that. So that's I really had wanted to delegate the first three items to make sure that you know our position on it, and in particular the Thames River regulated area mapping. I will back to talk more when the report, when we see what's in that. That's it, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mike. Let's give Tom a moment to get seated. Tom, join the meeting. You're giving it. Welcome, Tom. Okay. We've heard the delegation for Mr. Wallace. I'll open up the floor to questions from board members. Peter, Scotty, Harge, any questions for Mr. Wallace? Oh, okay. I don't see any questions, Mike, or, oh, sorry, Tom, go ahead.
I have one question. So if lands are returned from from sterilization in the floodplain, how is that going to affect the city's planning envelope? Because then wouldn't there be a surplus of lands?
No, it's never going to be such thing as a surplus.
But wasn't there an inclusion to get to a new 30-year?
Yeah, so that goes to committee and council. It goes to committee, goes to PEC on next Tuesday, and it's adding 1,475 hectares of land inside it's inside the city boundary now. So it's just an expansion of the urban growth boundary inside the boundary. So that's for 30 years. That's 42 years.
42?
We do the calculations right.
Yeah.
A little more.
So the
Provincial guidelines? But
so what happens with that after the council approves it? Let's assume they approve it. It goes to the minister for signing.
and then what if more lands are added if the boundaries changed? Or
There's no boundary change to the city of London.
the zoned areas that allow for residential and commercial development.
So the current urban growth boundary was developed 30 years ago. So this is an update to
Yeah.
30 years that. So if addition, let's use for argument's sake,
I'm going
It
to,
went-
point of order.
Yeah.
Pretty much, we're getting into a debate here.
Oh, right.
Yeah, we're getting into a debate. We're getting off your points and we're
We certainly,
discussing City of London policy.
okay,
And this is
fine. No
this is
problem.
not,
Just trying to respond to the question.
no, and I understand, I appreciate that, but I think the question from the board members should probably be
Fine.
directed through staff towards the city for their comment. We're getting into a planning area that we have no jurisdiction over as such, so I'll have to leave it there. Members, anything further on this? Okay, don't see anything further. Thank you, Mr. Wallace, for your comments. They're duly noted, and we appreciate the time you've taken to deliver those to us. Okay, so we've dealt with item 4.1. So now, according to our amended agenda, we will move on to our next item, which was to move item 8.2 up to follow the delegation. I will look to staff to start that off for us, please.
Thank you, Chair. For you, to the members, I've provided a little bit of an overview presentation, because as you know, there's been lots of provincial announcements over the last couple of weeks, and significant changes to the way conservation authorities would operate in the future. I'd also point out that as a group, conservation authorities within the Southwest and the proposed Lake Erie Basin have been meeting collaboratively, and many of these messages have been informed by their input in our discussions. So certainly we've been sharing what we have, and certainly highlighting different instances where some of these changes may affect some regions more than others, or some CAs more than others. The next slide, I'll start off with a little bit of the timeline. And we first saw a provincial announcement back in June of the Chief Conservation Executive being appointed. This was a newly created role to lead efforts to create consistency, reduce costs, and speed up critical infrastructure housing development. Hassan Bassett is the Chief Conservation Executive who was appointed to that position. Then on October 31st, we received a provincial announcement with an intention to create a new provincial board governed agency, really to provide that centralized leadership and consolidate 36 CAs into regional CAs. Again, this was a broader announcement with not a lot of specific detail. Until the following week on November 6th, the budget bill appeared to Protect Ontario Act. It included measures that changed conservation authorities, providing for the creation of this Ontario Provincial Conservation Agency. So with that, we were expecting additional changes to come from regional boundaries consolidations after. It turned out it was the very next day, an ERO posting was received. Again, that proposal consolidates the 36 CAs into 7 regional CAs, inviting comments for everyone in the public on the environmental registry until this midnight 22nd. So that's where we're at this point in time, but know that there will be additional legislative and regulatory changes accepted in the new year. Again, that will be based on additional regulations to enact those changes. And part of that is to ensure that there will be a transition to a new governance model. So board members as of today will remain in their positions until after the municipal election, where this new framework will take effect. Next slide, please. So why? The province is suggesting that the current system of 36 separate conservation authorities is fragmented, with each authority following different policies, standards, fees, levels of staffing and technology capabilities. This has led to unpredictable, inconsistent turnaround times for approvals across province and across conservation authorities, creating uncertainties and delays for builders, landowners, and farmers seeking permits, and undermining conservation authorities' ability to protect communities from floods and natural hazards. I'll get into a little bit of where we're seeing this later on in the presentation. But certainly there was some support on these ideas as was tweeted out through X, I guess now. You see in the other frame. The next slide, there's certainly province saying that they are improving Ontario's conservation authorities. That's been the messaging, making improvements to the CA system by amending the Conservation Authorities Act or this provincial board governed agency. This is this new Ontario Provincial Conservation Agency. It will provide province-wide coordination, shared digital and technical resources, and consistent practices that strengthen, not replace, the work of regional conservation authorities, current CAs. The consolidating of the existing 36 CAs into these regional watershed-based CAs would result in 7 regionals. Next slide. Through a presentation that Dean and I attended with ministry staff last week, they're really keen to point out what's changing and what isn't changing. You can see what these changes will mean. More resources for frontline services. That was repeated over and over again. More work frontline. Improved flood management and erosion protection. Strong environmental protections would be maintained. Faster permit approvals, modern service deliveries, and consistent standards and use of modern technology. They're also keen to point out what's not changing. Although they say the governance model, regional CAs will continue to be independent, municipally governed organizations. Although we'll touch on that a little bit later in the presentation, member municipalities will continue to be represented on a board of directors for each regional CA and retain full governance responsibility for the regional CA as well. Where conservation authorities operate currently, they will continue to be served by CAs, meaning the jurisdiction isn't going to be expanded, retracted, where conservation authorities are distributed throughout the province now. The municipal programs and services that CAs provide, including the responsibilities for source protection, natural hazard, and watershed management, would be maintained. Our ownership and management of our lands, trails, providing access to green spaces, recreation, and education programs change, and where and how we receive funding through municipal levies, including maintaining board approval for final regional CA budgets, would not change. Although geographically, those extents are certainly changing. Next slide. Again, there was lots of questions about what the role of this new provincial conservation agency and their objectives. I've included that in the report before you as well, but I'll highlight it here, and that's to oversight the consolidation of the 7 regional CAs, or the CAs into those 7 regional CAs, oversee the governance and operations, promote consistent policy standards and fees, evaluate financial performance, and guide and evaluate strategic planning to align with provincial objectives, support development of standardized and centralized permitting systems, and lead development of digital strategies and shared services, support strategic investment, including leveraging funding, and to advise the government. So that's kind of the key. This agency is about advising the government and being that link between CAs and the province. Next slide. The governance model for this agency would have 5 to 12 members appointed by the Lieutenant Governor and Council and serve a term up to 3 years with a maximum of 3 terms or 9 years. They would meet a minimum of 4 times per year, and they can issue direction to CAs on key performance indicators, service standards, procurement, training of members and employees, budgeting, asset management plans, and strategic plans. However, all direction must be approved by the minister first. So with the Ontario Provincial Conservation Agency, I'm going to throw the A's are going to throw me off with authorities. The staffing, there would be a Secretary of Cabinet who will appoint the first CAO to this agency, and then the board will appoint subsequent CAOs. The CAOs is under the supervision of the board, much like funding. This is interesting. The ministry may provide funding for these conservation agencies. They can charge fees and they can also apportion costs to CA. The agency oversight will follow provincial agencies' appointments directives, including annual letter of direction. And every 3 years, they're required to report back on the effectiveness and value for money. And the minister can issue mandatory directives to the agency and require a full review and audit of the agency's activities. And they must provide the minister with a copy of any CA directive 45 days prior to issuing. So that's kind of the prescribed time. Next slide, as you can see here from the map on Conservation Ontario, there's 36 CAs across the province, all developed on watershed boundaries. This has been learned time and time again, been pointed to as a meaningful scale for planning and promotive, efficient and sustainable use of natural resources and water management. And of course, because they're based on watershed boundaries, they're going to be crossing municipal boundaries. We do have that misalignment, but for its purposes, it serves us very well. With the new proposal, it's on the environmental registry, it's into these 7 regional conservation authorities. They're still based on watersheds, however, regional watersheds. Slide, the next one, that'll detail that a little bit more. Their key idea that's been identified on the environmental registry is to reduce overlap and administrative duties. That's been mentioned time and time again, and balancing expertise across CAs and providing service continuity, recognizing that there are some larger CAs that have that level of expertise and technical staff available, where some of the smaller ones may not have that same level of expertise. So the intent would be those staff with the expertise would be spread out over a larger geographic region. Next slide. So this is what the Lake Erie regional CA would look like, combining the Grand, Long Point, ourselves, Catfish Kettle, Lower Thames, the St. Clair region, and Essex region CAs together. And the list of municipalities is at least 81. There's 81 listed. However, we do know that there are some upper tier municipalities. County of Oxford is not listed in this, and they are certainly a member of the grant. So lots of municipalities listed there. So when it comes to that representation, I have lots of questions about how that governance model will look in such a large area. So existing versus proposed. This is the current number of CAs, and the province in their initial announcement really focused on municipalities that have more than 2 CAs. So reducing that administrative burden, because why carry those overhead costs when some municipalities have more than 2. So really highlighting that over 50% of municipalities share 2 or more conservation authorities. However, when you actually look at the same information on the slide and flip it around, there's actually 83% of municipalities that share 2 or fewer CAs. I don't think that's a bad thing. And given that we are on a watershed basis, it's not surprising that we would cover more than 2 in some cases. Just pointing that out. Next slide is kind of highlighting the funding as well. I mentioned it generally previously, but on the right, you'll see kind of the structure as we're envisioning it. That, of course, M&R and MECP, we have responsibilities to both. The Chief Conservation Officer, Gazette's position, kind of acts in that in-between space between the province and the new Conservation Agency Board. There will be staff at the agency, and then each one of these new several regions of new CA boundaries. So OPCA would still provide oversight, including all municipally funded programs as well. So I'd point that out. It's not just mandatory, it is all programs. They can apportion costs to the regional CAs. Municipalities, there's no details about how representation will be on these OPC A boards, so the actual agencies. And it's unclear how representation over such a large geography will be established on the regional conservation of those either. So. Next slide, with consolidation or the consultation, sorry. We've got the ERO posting for the boundaries for regional consolidation. It closes December 22nd. There's been municipal and CA information sessions as recently as last week. And when we were in those sessions last week, they had made a commitment that there will be regional roundtables with the CAs and municipalities planned soon or in the near future, but we have not yet seen an announcement on that. As you know, the Bill 68 for the creation of the agency is making its way through the legislature now. I think today it's likely to be proclaimed. So really the consultation piece is on the ERO, is on these boundaries. And on the consultation piece, there's a number of discussion questions. You can read there, what do you see as key factors to support a successful transition and outcome of regional conservation authority consolidation? What opportunities or benefits may come from a regional conservation authority framework? Do you have any suggestions for how governance could be structured at the regional conservation authority level, including suggestions around board size, makeup, and the municipal representative appointment process? Do you have any suggestions on how to maintain a transparent and consultative budgeting process across member municipalities within a regional conservation authority? And how can regional conservation authorities maintain and strengthen relationships with local communities and stakeholders? This is where, through everything that we've had in the municipal sessions and feedback when questions have been asked, there's been a lot of to be determined. Slide, jumping right ahead. This is really about a vision at this point, and the purpose of the consultation is to gain that understanding with outcomes not yet known. They did point as well that there's templates for this type of consolidation used for health units in municipalities. I'm sure you've all had some experiences with that you'd like to share. They also indicated when there was questions about, unique situations in the Lake Erie Regional CA. There's actually two CAs that have union environments. One is with QP and one is with OPSU. So how does that work? Again, the responses were about, well, there'll be expert guidance provided with access to consultants through this new agency. So asked about assets, lots of questions around that as well, and lands. All assets would become assets of the new regional conservation authority. This is not about the province dictating what happens then after. It would be up to these regional boards who will be in control of the transition timeline and structure of the new regional CAs. Although the agency will be created by 2027, it was recognized that transition takes time and it'll be much phased approach. Again, determining on each regional CA board. But CAs will be receiving direction as soon as the agency is established and efforts to ensure smooth transitions. And they will be establishing key performance indicators tied to provincial funding. So if certain indicators are not achieved, then funding could be withheld. That was indicated as well. And this comes back to now that I'm providing what we've heard, where CAs are kind of questioning, because when we're talking about the history of CAs and our records, almost 80 years, so since the CA Act was formed. And that was really for municipalities with shared watersheds, the ability to manage natural resources collaboratively, recognizing that natural resources and water management do not follow these steps. We were mandated to protect people and property from flooding, erosion, and other hazards, and really recognizing the uniqueness of each CAs and local buy-in to that integrated watershed management, watershed cycle, those grassroots connections and local understanding of their areas and what's important, what the needs are for their local environment. The watershed, again, is much about land as community connections. When I think of all of our friends of groups that do on the ground, it's about those local connections. Next slide. Again, when we look at our record, we've been through lots of change recently. And we've already improved standardization and modernization and increased municipal control over budgets and programs and services, starting with the mandatory programs and services. The Ontario Regulation 686/21, requiring CAs to categorize their program to 1, 2, or 3 if they're mandatory, municipally requested, or deemed advisable for that broader watershed basis. We've had budget apportionment regulations in April of 2022, completely changing our budget process for clarity, transparency, and standardization. We've had minister fee classes identified where identified where CAs can charge fees for and request for all CAs to have a written policy. We actually had a policy before that. Again, it's transparent, it's posted on our website, all under governance requirements. And then as recently as last year, the new prohibited activities and exemption permits, one regulation for all CAs. It introduced exemption clauses, mapping requirements. It reduced the regulated areas around wetlands, making regulations smaller, and introduced alternative appeal mechanisms. Again, all of these things already provided additional standardization and consistency. Next slide, with the current CA standards. This is taken from Conservation Ontario's annual report. As the CAs across the province, 96 are issuing permits within the timelines required under regulation. Over 7,180 permits are issued, and that wasn't even the full year because it started in April once the new reg came into effect. 93% complete application reviews were within timelines. All CAs have online mapping resources available, and you can see that differentiation between major permits and minor permits there, knowing that those major permits typically take a lot more time. So when looking kind of at the where am I here? Analysis, sorry, I jumped ahead. The majority of the provincial concerns can be addressed without consolidation into 7 regions. I looked at some of those legislative changes with the CAs willing to work with the ministry to implement all of those past regulatory changes. We can certainly do the same if there's more standardization desired. There's most consolidations take, I've heard, anywhere between 5 to 10 years to facilitate, especially when you have to consider new governance model, financial implications, transparency, and staffing as well. And then again, with standardized policies, technical guides, e-permitting services or software that can be implemented cost effectively with provincial guidance within the existing framework. Again, if we had the tools, we could implement changes. Next one. Just a few points on the broader governance, concerns about how that happens and wanting to ensure that there's that local input and control by member municipalities. You know, from the broader CAs within that Lake Erie region, it's at least 30% are funded for CA programs and services, including hazard mapping. That's all programs and services, not just category 1. The government model needs to reflect significant municipal financial contributions and regional versus urban nature of watersheds. I know when the Upper Thames, we had a reduction in board size in the mid-90s. Key component in those discussions was ensuring that our rural voices were balanced by those urban municipalities, and not going straightly from representation based on population numbers. Again, 81 member municipalities vying for a voice and representation at one regional board doesn't provide enough autonomy to ensure decisions are fulfilled and protect local interests. Again, depending on how that governance is structured over such a broad area, there may not be people on those boards that have the local knowledge like you do of your area. So a few of the proposed comments, certainly want to have some more time to actually provide some, the agency to get settled and provide some leadership on some of the standardization that they'd like to see and permitting. That was one of the examples that they had suggested that there could be funding available to, and leave that current CA structure as is. We can certainly, there might be an opportunity to provide some financial incentives to CAs to consolidate on their own based on local watershed needs and political environments. Because certainly there may be some examples out there where that does make financial sense as well. Looking at that regional perspective, governance, again, of the regional CAs needs to be really carefully evaluated to ensure that representation matches the municipal contributions. And again, I'll say it again about the rural municipalities, and have fair representation compared to the urban counterparts. Local advisory boards and district staffing hubs are recommended, of course. And regionalization may have unintended consequences as well of creating that more bureaucracy, that additional level in there, and decrease effective communication between CAs and municipalities, as well as between CAs and our local stakeholders. Next slide, a little bit of the financial again. So again, these numbers are based on the general regional CAs, not just ours alone, but over 30% again of programs and services are funded. And then we take those funds and we leverage them, self-generating on average about 50% or more of revenues. So that's significant, not just for us. I know we exceed that in certain categories of programs, or category 3, but generally as a whole, CAs are providing that much leverage. So when looking at those regional cost sharing models, can unintentionally create inequities between urban and rural municipalities' ability to pay. With increased oversight by the province through these provincial agencies, we may have decreased ability to leverage funds. I know they have been telling us that no, the CAs can be separate entities as we always have been. But I think that's always something that I want to be aware of through these changes, that depending on how closely we fall under these agencies, there may be some limitation on funding opportunities if we are considered an agency, board, or commission of a provincial government. So keeping that in mind. There's a lack of local CA presence. Again, we'll remove those local partnerships and ability to communicate with the local communities and hear about things. But what ability will regional CAs have to determine apportionment of costs from the Ontario Provincial Conservation Agency? How will apportionment be determined? We haven't seen those details yet either. And financial reserves and funds generated locally should be directed back to the community in which they were originated. So that's another concern about finances. When we're looking at our mandatory programs, CAs are certainly meeting or exceeding the provincial timelines and reporting through annual reports on our success in public available annual reports and requirements, again, on our governance page. When it comes to permitting, I think last year we hit 99%, pretty good target to me. And municipalities are the ones that are supporting this and funding mandatory programs, and very little from the province. So in principle, certainly Port desires for more streamlining approvals through consistent policies and e-permitting services, and even our board report and report from Blackline supports that initiative as well. Consolidations of CAs we feel will actually slow progress as resources are directed to consolidation concerns and communication rather than that front of line work. I know we've certainly seen that over the last few years, responding to all these provincial changes are taking us away from doing the work on the ground. And certainly respectively, the CA framework is not preventing this from happening. We need updated technical guides, consistent flood standards. That's the desire. Just give us what the new standards are, and we need adequate funding in order to implement that. So those are the tools that would certainly be an assistance. Next slide. When we're talking about category 2 and 3 programs, we know from just negotiating agreements with our member municipalities for locally led programs and services that reflect those municipal watershed needs, everything from our tree planting and tree power programs, enhanced water quality monitoring, our education and outreach and stewardship programs. It just reaffirms that municipalities rely upon the CAs and the value that we bring, leveraging those dollars that we're able to achieve. We're built on those local relationships and those face-to-face communications. And locally, our staff live and work in the same watersheds, and we're the boots on the ground where necessary. That's the one huge difference that we've seen from the province over the years and over time. We're the ones out there doing on the ground work. Concern is become such a large entity, we won't have that same relationship with many of our landowners. There's also a concern about donations of land, stewardship, and employment opportunities, depending on those local connections too, for such a big region. So in summary, it can't be lost. That was one of the other items that Hassan Bassett mentioned in the November 18th. Certainly they're looking to have comments back on those questions answered. But then adding to what are some of the key things that CAs cannot be lost in any proposed consolidations. And key is those local offices and staffing, again, maintaining that boots on the ground and local proximity for people to assist people. Just given the sheer size of the region for efficiencies, it's going to be maintaining those local or district offices the province uses. Local decisions through local representation again, continuation of all local programs and services, and overall a governance model that allows local grassroots natures CAs that was modeled and envisioned in 1946 to continue. We talk about local watershed management decisions in the hands of locals. So with that, a little bit of a highlight and overview from initial steps. We're working collaboratively, again, I've mentioned, to develop our communication plans and tools. We've had local meetings with GMs and CAOs of other CAs, but also we want to get out and talk to our municipal partners, CAOs, municipalities and planning staff. I've already been on the phone to a few and had some conversations. A letter advising of concerns to member municipalities, and this is where I've got a possible board motion. Outreach to local interest holders, advising of the need to respond to ERO posting. We already did include that with Thames River Current, but perhaps extending out and really offering some encouragement to our direct partners to engage in that ERO posting. But through this time, myself and Dean to really act, and the power is necessary. We've seen a lot of changes very quickly. I know we've also have proposed for a meeting in December to again bring back our final ERO comments for final approval and submission. But wanting to make sure that we're spreading these things I'm hoping that this information today can provide a little bit more of background in the way of a one pager, some talking points, and a resolution that maybe could be crafted for your municipalities to use to communicate to your own councils as well. So I put together a sample motion. I think a long one. We have paper copies as well to read out. And as CAs have on the board, I know Essex Region, their motion was finally packaged today. There's been other CAs bring forward motions, and we've been perhaps condensing the motion a little bit as we've had more discussion, and this is comparable to what the Concrete Authority provided at their board meeting just last week. Lower Thames have a very similar as well. It was just approved last week. I can read it all out for you. No. But I'll take questions. And as I said, there's lots of moving parts to this. We might not necessarily have the question answers yet, as there's many things that don't ask to be done.
Okay, thanks, Tracy. Tracy's given an overview presentation that provides a summary of the Conservation Authorities Act amendments to create the provincial agency and information provided on the proposed regional consolidation of conservation authorities. We've just been given the abridged version. So I will open the floor to speakers, and Brian, you're first on the speakers list. Go ahead, please.
I'm not gonna support this, and I haven't read it yet, because I'm gonna tell you, no one's gonna, like, the municipal councils are not gonna read something that long and understand it. We around this board table, that's our duty to understand everything about the conservation authorities, and I can sit here and go on another hour plus rant about why this is so actually embarrassing for the government to propose an incompetency, but the problem is that what we can reply to the ERO posting, which we should flood that with all those ideas. But also the problem is that this is a political item, and we've just shown that Bill 68 is going to pass today. It closed yesterday for comments. They don't care. They have a majority government. They're going to do what they want. But what we need to show is political, and the CAOs and stuff are great to talk to, but it's the people around the council table that need to know about this and raise concerns, and our stakeholders, which you heard from here today, about how this goes against all of our natural interest in what we're trying to do and make things better. There's tons of models out there that you can show using the health units and school boards as consolidation models, and even municipalities is probably not a good argument to make, but it's one of those things where we all know this is not going to work and make things more efficient or better or anything like that. And it's not our job to tell them it's their job, and we will, but tell the government that they probably should look up and understand the roles and responsibilities of conservation authorities. It's not just planning and permitting. That is a significant role, but there's others. And we're not a planning authority. We are a conservation authority, which means that we are not permitting or prohibiting by nature, but there's roles to play in that. But anyway, I will not get in a rant. I will say that we have to, what we need to be able to do is get in front of council with a very easy thing to say, this is bad. This will slow things down and really highlight those roles of what are the main arguments about why it's bad for municipalities. One, we've put a lot of money in here. How much money do we have sitting in long-term investments that our municipalities have put in there? Where's that going? Municipalities in the Conservation Authority Act have had the ability. They're the ones who formed them. They're the ones who changed, the ones that dissolved them. These were agreements. These are municipal organizations, and now we're not being consulted. We're consulted on how do we do this, not if you want it. So that to me, I guess if there's a question there is, what is the plan to engage municipal political leaders to ensure that they are aware of the implications of this concern in a concise way?
Thank you.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, no, this sample motion was really for us to have on the record how, as board members, because there are a few options moving forward. There are, outright just don't want to see anything, no change whatsoever. Instead, the wording that, if I flip down to the next slide, I'll highlight there, is that we don't support the Lake Erie Regional Conservation Authority boundary configuration outlined in the environmental registry. And the board instead requests that the ministry engage directly with affected municipalities and conservation authorities to evaluate a reduced geographic scope for consolidation that better reflects established relationships and enhanced cost-efficient delivery of integrated watershed management, grassroots connections, and local understanding. So really that gets to the gist of it. And that's where I'd be asking for municipalities to support something like that. Very much of an abridged version, as well as front back, kind of a communication, high level talking points to accompany that.
So just to follow up on that, municipalities have spoken through their voting to join together to form CAs already, and we fund the bill on almost 100% of any level of government on it. So the vast majority of it. So to me, I think the problem I have with what's going on now and generally in the government scope is that that local governance model, regardless of what it's school boards, health units, municipalities, conservation authorities, is being lost and turning an administrative role to levy our residents for money that the government changes their priorities on without their actual role of governance to set policies. And that's where, unfortunately, if we don't wake up as municipalities and put the brakes on here and fight back and say, no, this is our role that you put us through. And that's where I think the message needs to be, is just raising the alarm bells of saying, your control is being gone here and you're going to lose it. And 81 municipalities are going to have to, like, how's that going to work? I just don't, and that's my concern there, is that everybody's in municipal budget season now. They're doing this on purpose. It's a very busy time of year. You have the holiday season coming up. You have to get a strong, simple message to municipalities if you're going to get them to hear it right now, and get them on board to do it. All of our staff are like Oxford County staff. They put tons of comments in as well, and they'll put more in. I'm not worried about the municipal staff. They're going to recognize this in a heartbeat. It's getting people who are now. The good news is there's a bunch of us that are now elected officials on the board on all CAs. But if you can't get that political motion to put, like a movement from municipalities to push back on this, that's the only way you're going to stop this. And the reason why it needs to be stopped is because it doesn't need to be done in the first place. I think we have lots of reports on the agenda today that show that we want to make those changes, but you got to give us time to catch up from the last time they had a great idea. And so it's really hard. I'll be honest, that's what I'm hearing from industry as well. Constant planning changes, constant changes. You can't adapt that fast and have outcomes. They literally, like, we just got through their great idea of let's all do this. We did what we wanted to do. We've had half a year and now it's like completely change again. Not to mention that the impact to the human effect of our staff and everybody else. I'm sorry to the staff, because I can't imagine what you're thinking right now with the uncertainty that's going through here. So I think for respect to them and respect to what's been built up since 1946, the biggest thing we need to do is start ringing the bell and raise the alarm bells with our stakeholders, with everybody going, wait a minute here. You're going to lose something great that nobody else has to begin with. That's the envy of the world. And is there problems? Can you always make it better? Yes. And I think we need to. We got a great report coming up that I think is but it's one of those things where if you change everything, I hate to say, Mr. Wallace, you're not going to get, the influence is gone. City of London, or member municipalities, LDI can come in here and actually have an influence on the board. And I think it's very showing where it is. Good luck. I don't know how someone from Wyerton is going to drive 15 hours to Thunder Bay and have an influence. Now, if they're going to go for a lake watershed approach, they should probably remember watershed, that all flows into one, connected. And so this was formed on local watersheds that actually had effect to save flooding and have a real effect. So again, To me, it's gotta be simple to raise the alarm bell and put all the effort into doing that. Cause I know the technical comments are gonna come. We can all tell how this is bad, but we need to raise that alarm bell and go, wait a minute, before it's too late. And all of a sudden we're sitting around for 5 years going, what can we do? How do we do this? And
Right, I'm glad this is recorded because I can't catch all that. So, all right, so anything further on Brian's comment?
Nope,
Before I go to the
appreciate
next speaker?
comment, and yeah, that's the intent, trying to minimize that for municipalities, but this motion being on the record for as a board.
Okay, all right, I have Sandy and then after Sandy, Tom. Go ahead, Sandy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm probably gonna take a while as well, but building on some of the things that Brian had said and were in the presentation as well. In the communication, Brian makes a really good point that one of the audiences for the message is municipalities and the specific impact on municipalities within this and the other watersheds. And I think the province is a different audience for different things. A lot of what's in the material we got from Essex Region Conservation Authority from November 19th is really good for that communication to municipalities. And asking for actual full consultation with municipalities regarding funding, regarding representation. The notion that 81 municipalities will continue to be represented on a board of directors for each regional CA is frankly preposterous. And what I find really interesting with my background working in healthcare was that the Liberal government set up LINs, which sounds strikingly familiar to what the province is doing with the CAs. Interestingly enough, it was this conservative government that got rid of the LINs. So there seems to be a lack of institutional memory on stuff like this. And it's already affecting, because I understand from other areas that people who are considering large donations to conservation authorities have already stopped because they don't know what's going to happen next or when it's going to happen, who's going to get the money, how will it get applied, because there will be a whole new governance structure. So again, that's to me a message to municipalities, maybe not so much to the province, but there's, as I said, there's a large list what Essex has. From the provincial perspective, I think there's a lot of optimism. I mean, the idea of standardization and e-permitting makes good sense. But are they going to build a new system? Are they going to adapt an existing system? There'll be data upload from the entire province. Anybody who's been involved in those kind of system changes, to think that you're going to do that in a year is also preposterous. There will be problems. There are always problems. It's something that massive. So that will be disruptive, not only to our staff, not only to the municipalities, but also the landowners and the developers. Because where do you go in the middle of that change to get your permit? And I gotta say that I'm somewhat pessimistic that some of this will happen, because there was a special flood advisor back in 2019 who had a whole bunch of recommendations that still haven't been implemented, including establishing a working group with provincial departments, conservation authorities, and municipalities to prepare a multi-year approach to floodplain mapping. And consider a provincial custodian for floodplain mapping information and the necessary, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the more complex you make this, the more difficult you make it, which Yeah, the old expression is keep it simple, stupid. And that really applies to almost every change that I've been involved in. I worked for the hospital when University Hospital merged with Vic. And then I worked in the mental health care program when they consolidated it from 3 different sites to 1. And it took years for the changes. I still remember the CEO of UH saying when South Street was going to close. I think it was 5 years after it ended up happening. And then there are internally the big changes in cultures of organizations are different. And it was years before people stopped saying, well, at Vic, we did it this way. And speaking of that, the idea that there's going to be savings somewhere along the line, particularly with general managers' positions. Yeah, there's a principle in, I think, case law. Grant can back me up, but there certainly is in human relations. Something called red circling. If somebody changes jobs to a lower evaluated position, they still keep their existing salary. You don't save a lot of money in the short term. I'm not sure where the savings is going to come from. And speaking of which, where's the money going to come from? Who's going to pay for all this change? Because it doesn't come for free. And there's a lot of details. That to me is directed to the province. And I'm sure it'll be worked out later. But how do any of the organizations, including ours, figure out, do we make some changes to the 2026 budget to deal with these changes that are coming in 2027? I'm not sure because I don't know what to budget. I mean, do we put a contingency of some sort and then try to explain it to our municipal partners?
Again,
It's not going to happen. So somebody's going to have to pay for that. I'm certainly very interested in finding out from once, what about the reserves? I'm interested in finding out from the province, they keep using the term regional CAs and sometimes CAs. What do you mean? Who does what? That's not going to be in a resolution. That's not going to be in an ERO posting. But somewhere along the line, there's so much disorder that's being created in this. And I don't understand what problem is trying to be solved. If the issue is there's a desire for faster approvals, frankly, get rid of the entire conservation authority. Build in floodplains. Don't do planning. There are things that could have been done if that's the problem. But if that indeed is the problem, I don't see how much of this solves that problem. And it doesn't seem to me that the province, in what you've shown us, has really explained it very well. And I think Essex put it best. There's no evidence. If you want to make it better, there are other ways to make this better. Probably with talking to the people who are delivering the service. Kind of like we did finally in getting a consultant to come in and look at our processes. I don't know if that's happened at a level that has resulted in this recommendation coming forward in the bill. It's ready. No, it's fire ready aim. And it's not helpful. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Sandy. Just one supplementary comment, on the November 18th Teams meeting with the ministry. That Teams call lasted 1 hour. And within that hour, I will say that the presentation made by the ministry and Mr. Bassett comprised at least half an hour of that hour. The remainder of the hours was dedicated to questions. And as Tracy alluded to in her presentation, there were more questions than answers in that half hour. So just to follow up in your words, Sandy. So I've got Tom next, and then I understand, Peter, you had you wanted to speak as well. So I'll did you have anything, Peter? Oh, okay, all right.
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Okay, no, just wanted to check.
I
Okay,
would,
Tom.
I'm sorry, Chair, at the end of this, I'd like a recorded vote, please. Thank you.
Okay, well, right now, we're just, all we have right now is a report for information. Peter, at this point,
Oh, I thought we had a motion to vote on. Sorry, my apologies.
there was a sample motion, presented for the board's consideration, but, there's been no further movement on that point yet. So we're just, responding to the presentation.
Sorry, didn't have one or a quick comment
Oh, sure.
that hasn't been mentioned yet. Where's the consultation with the First Nations? Wasn't necessary in 46. Here's how it is now. I haven't heard anything about that in this whole process.
Yeah, so noted. Tom, go ahead, please. You're next on the speakers list.
Yeah, thank you. I'll be brief. In a word, this is just chaos. And I think it's important to talk to our municipal partners, but they don't care unless their voters care, right? Because what we're looking at is the freight train of inevitability. And everyone's saying, well, what are you gonna do? Right? But the reality is that this is gonna have chaos for the next 4 years. This is also downloading from the province because that board is gonna be funded by municipal taxpayers, so it is downloading. And what happened to the ministry? Wasn't the ministry supposed to do all of these things? Maybe if the ministry had been talking to us, like when was the last time there was a consultation? When Jeff UTRCA had that meeting with, which came up with the different funding streams. So I don't think there has been guidance and leadership on these specific challenges. And again, like, I think a lot of if there is a capacity gap, that can be resolved through joint service agreements. This is building mega bureaucracy. And, you know, like, I think we have like excellent administrators, but you are going to get just bigger, more layers. And that's ultimately what municipalities and voters care about is their service levels. And yeah, I like the Upper Thames, and I know people who are in smaller CAs and they love their CAs because they have that direct relationship. You have CAs that have charities that fund them.
Mm-hmm.
Who's gonna fund the mega CA? Right? Like, this is gonna add more costs. And yeah, you may save on top line administrators, but you're gonna get a lot more mid-level administration. And I don't think you're gonna see operational efficiencies. If there are technological efficiencies and expertise, I think those are things that are already built into fee-for-service models that can be done on a voluntary basis. And we're gonna be the biggest region. And you're already taking two of the biggest CAs and putting them together. So you're doubling down on what were already expertise rich areas. So if they do want to do it, I don't think that the Erie is really gaining efficiencies in the way that they have constructed it. You know, there may be ways where you, like, we already work with St. Clair on lots of things. We already work with Lower Thames on flood modeling. Like, these relationships exist. And I think there are some more natural linkages that could be considered. But I don't think we want to fund mega bureaucracies. And the last thing to say is, in the private sector, when you look at mergers, that's because you got no ideas. Right? And mergers don't make money. they just strip assets and ultimately you end up with a worse product. And, yeah, done.
Thanks, Tom. Just trying to, yeah, your question about what happened to the ministry, in terms of their.
Direction and oversight.
I think some of that was noted during our teams meeting with CO members. There was some questions about where does the ministries fit into all of this? And again, there's more questions than answers on the behalf of our counterparts at CO. So, well, go ahead.
Yeah, I have some comments, but I agree with everything that's been said so far, and the general questions have been thrown out there. We have a couple specific questions for staff, and the first is there any role for Conservation Ontario during the transition period? And is it even going to exist after this is implemented? Haven't heard anything really about Conservation Ontario.
Through the chair, I'll respond in that, the one thing to keep kind of separate is that Conservation Ontario really works on behalf of CAs. Advocating for CAs, compiling information, whereas the agency seems to be working and set up to work on behalf of the province. So how that role will continue in the future, once the regional CAs are formed, it's uncertain. Again, there's a levy that we contribute annually for the work that CO does to support CAs. But again, I'm not quite sure where that might be in the future. Yeah, to those regional boards then to make a decision.
Just another one of the many, many unknowns. My other question is, Mr. Bassett. I remember hearing his name 2 or 3 years ago in another role where he was consulting. And I think at that time that the CAs thought he was a good appointment. To me, it doesn't seem like we have any chance of influencing the government not to set up this agency. If we have any chance of getting away from forming this regional conservation authorities, it could be to influence the agency and Mr. Bassett. So can you give us any input on his background and what he's done in the past? And is he just a lapdog for the province, or is he actually a conservation guy?
I'll do my best. From what I do know is Mr. Bassett actually worked for Halton Region CA for about 20 years. Largely in communications, and became their CAO president was his title. But very much his experience has been in the Halton region, dealing with 2 different regional municipalities, not a broader member representation like we have throughout our watershed. So I think perhaps his experience may be very urban focused and focused on regional representation at the regional level, rather than representing municipalities throughout all of our areas. So perhaps that he did play a significant role when the first changes to the Conservation Authorities Act were announced back in 2019, and his discussions with Jeff Urick, the minister at the time, who oversaw CAs, was to establish a working group. In Hazan's position, he was chair of that working group. Representatives of CAs, industry, Ontario, AMO, I should say, OFA, we've had a seat at the table. Again, a broad spectrum. They did have to sign confidentiality agreements, but much of that work informed some of the revisions to regulation and what we saw in the mandatory programs and services regulation, keeping open that watershed management strategy being one of the deliverables. But yeah, since then, he ended up going and working for the regional municipality, and then has been appointed in this position today. So he certainly has a great deal of background and expertise in CAs, but perhaps more of an urban focus. And as well, we're not sure what his directions have been from the province. It's the latter part of the question answer. So Again, even the agency will get directions annually from the province and without knowing what those directions are for CAs to comment on what that might be.
Well, quick comments to build on with previous comments. My two big issues here. First of all, is on staffing, and the impact on staffing. If I was sitting on that side of the room, I would spend some time in the last 3 weeks checking out my resume or my retirement plans, or maybe both. I think you people have worked hard to get where you are, and I don't think many of you want to be redeployed, as the minister phrased it. But you're also well educated and highly skilled, and there are going to be positions for you, but there could be real disruptions in where you end up, whether it's within this new environment or whether it's private industry, whether it's somewhere else in North America. So your lives are going to be disrupted, but I think even greater loss will be to the new agencies and the loss of experience and the buy-in that you people have. Has been mentioned. You get buy-in to, we're a relatively large conservation authority, but pretty small in compared to this new proposal. So as been mentioned by previous speakers, I don't see buy-in is going to be there on both sides. My other concern, also to follow up with, as a representative of a purely rural municipality, I looked at this list of 81. In the Upper Thames, we have 3 cities dominated by the City of London, which is understandable considering the amount of levy that they pay in and the urban issues. But we would be moving from 3 cities to 12 cities, including huge cities like Hamilton, Kitchener-Waterloo, Cambridge, Windsor. And also we currently have 2 towns, Tillsburg and Ingersoll, and there would be 18 towns in this new municipal structure, including a little place called Milton, which is officially a town, but
St.
oh,
Mary.
sorry, I forgot St. Mary.
Spadable.
And that's that. But anyway, the point is, in the 81 municipalities with 12 cities, many of them major, and towns, the rural impact is going to be very largely lost. So those are 2 points I want to say. I want to add, and it just builds on what previous have said about governance and staff. A lose-lose all the way around.
Tracy, did you have anything to offer there?
Yes, I can, about staff. I have had opportunities to have drop-in sessions with staff. I think we are in a little bit of a unique situation because we are one of the largest CAs within the grouping, and we have that technical level of staffing that many of our counterparts within the region may not have that. We know they don't have the full extent. It was repeated over and over again that, that technical level and bringing everyone up to a standard is what the desired outcome is. Again, I think we're situated very well, given the expertise we have of our staff and the diversity of staff and our proven record, that they may be working over a broader geographic area. So again, but lots of change, lots of disruption, absolutely. Yeah, not looking forward to the transition process.
I have Skylar on the speakers list and then followed by who?
Yeah, I'm not gonna reiterate everything that's been said, but I agree. I think this is absolute garbage legislation and it's a big time waste. That being said, I do want to move us along a little bit. So I personally do want to support this drafted motion, so I'd move it because I do want this on file and I want it sent to the ERO if that's the plan. And then I also would want to add direction to direct staff to submit a letter to all member municipalities expressing the economic impacts and risks to the member municipalities. I think we could talk about all the governance issues and staffing issues, which are valid and justifiable, but I think to previous points, member municipalities will probably care the most about financial impacts and risks. For example, the slide that said we will have to share all our assets. So talking about investments in these buildings that our member municipalities have put money into. I think that is a red flag for other people on our councils, and they probably will care about that and want some clarity. I also think we should continue to look at the funding model. We already know the province underfunds CAs, and that's not going to change, even though they may give some money. I don't believe that for a second. So I would like there to be an additional clause to that motion saying moves this motion, but direct staff to submit a letter. And then the only other question I had through the chair to staff is there a way to have a meeting at least with the conservation Halton guy? Because I feel like it might be, I know it's not his title, but I feel like the province is listening to him and he might listen to CAs, whereas I don't have a lot of faith in provincial officials listening to CAs. So are we able to chat with Mr.
Bassett,
Yes.
Tracy.
Sure, he is now the conservation executive appointed by the province. And he has committed to having roundtables with each regional CA group in the near future. And planning to set those up very quote unquote soon. So I'm expecting to get something probably in December to arrange those meetings. So certainly that is one of the next steps.
Great. Yeah, I think personally he might have the most influence on this legislation of people who would listen to other people. I think, again, it's everyone's opinion, but yeah, okay. I don't have anything else, but I did make a motion to move this and a letter to councils that ideally is no longer than 2 pages.
I'll second that, including the additional piece that Skylar has recommended.
So just to speak to that, Ms.
Go ahead, Brian.
The piece that I think is important is that I'll use a development example. Sometimes people ask for a lot because people will freak out and then they can go back to what they really want and say, oh, look, we did better. And then people are like, oh, that's good. I have a funny feeling that the stuff that's going to pass today with the agency is the absolute, that's the problem right there, is that the province, that's our job right now. And each individual one, and now they're going to take that and control that and the policy that's coming out. I have a funny feeling that let's put some preposterous out that everybody who looks at it goes, this is crazy. And they'll go, oh yeah, that was crazy, we'll roll that back. But the damage is going to be done. So I really want in that letter, if we could, to highlight the implications about what that change of the agency means. That's the true governance change. It's going to happen today. Like they were just about there yesterday. It's going to happen today. And then the control's gone. That turns this into a creative board, no governance. You just get to hand out the bill to people. That's no fun. The province wants to do that, they can do it themselves. They certainly won't be a part of it. But that's where I think that just on that, just like that, because I really think everybody's gonna be focusing on this, but the damage is that thing up there.
I think
I want to jump in here. We got different things going on here. I want to get through receiving the report first. And then to that end, I want to check in with, I had Hugh, and then I think Anna was wanting to speak as well. Were you wanting to speak on, I want to deal with the report first, and then any emotions arising from the report, we'll deal with that next. So I want to check in with you. You were on the speakers list next. Were you speaking to the report or to? No, to the.
Yep. No, as a person that represents a rural area, I think the tagline should be no taxation without representation. I represent an area, but London represents the money. So I kind of get that. So in budget, I have 1.35% of the vote. So at the end of the day here, my rural municipality isn't going to matter one little bit, because if we're not even going to get a third of a vote, because you can't with the amount of areas you have. And I emphasize that all 3 political parties in the last 50 years have pushed rural people away from the table. All 3 of them. Everything they come up with is to get rid of us. And they're doing a pretty good job of it. That's all I got.
Thanks, you. So noted. Anna, you wanted to add something on?
Yeah, ditto to everything that I've heard this morning. This reminds me of Minister Urick, a number of years saying DA shut down. And then we started to make all these changes. It is so disappointing being around for these years, seeing all these changes, modernizing, standardizing, changing our budgets. And now, what does that matter? What are we don't even understand. We see the improvements. Sure, we can always do better, but we have not been given a chance. And I am just so disappointed in not being able to be heard. I think councils need to understand what's going on. Sandy made a really good point. The Indigenous community, this letter or any communication should also go to the Indigenous communities as well. I'm just, I'm beside myself in terms of not only the concerns and the work that we need to do to make councils understand CAs and the implications of the decisions of the provincial government, but it's also, we're going into a municipal election. How does the community, how do residents even understand? And how do we talk about that? So concerns will continue. But that's it for me for now.
Anna? Scotty, Harge, any comments on the report presentation? No? Okay. All right, I will, oh, Tim, go ahead.
Thank you, and I don't want to get involved in all the discussion that we've had so far, because I tend to agree with most of it. But I did have a question regarding the report and those 7 large areas. Because one of the things that came to my mind right away was, in our area, we have some major structures. I can think of at least 3 dams. What about these other areas? And I'm trying to think, if they don't have these major structures, why would anybody want Upper Thames?
I could respond for the chair. The Grand certainly has large
Grand.
structures like us. Down through the lower Thames Valley, they have more series of diversion channels, pumping systems, infrastructure in place to divert water, not to bring water back. Down in Essex, not really the structures. They have many different smaller tributaries and everything's affected by the Great Lakes, and depth of flooding is always a concern. It's so flat. The St. Clair does have some structures, at least one, and to Chris, the Park Hill Dam and maybe another, but they're small.
A diversion.
Diversion, sorry, it's a diversion structure, yes. So, yeah, mostly us in the grant within that region.
Thank you. Anyone else, Tom, on the report?
On the, do we have a motion?
No, I'm dealing with the Tracy's report.
That we receive it.
Just any comments or questions on Tracy's report first before we go into exploring motions or further direction? Okay, so I will be very quick. I too share the concerns expressed by all of our board members. I too have more questions than answers through conversation with colleagues through CO. What assurance can the province provide to municipalities to demonstrate that their local interests are protected? That's my question. And another one goes to a lack of presence at the local level. If agencies are to direct CAs, then how does an individual municipality retain its own ability to effectively influence the decision-making process? I think it goes to Hugh's point 100%. Questions about ownership and control of assets, finances, staffing issues. It's all been said here already once, and I just wanted to reiterate for my own perspective. And it reminds me of as a boy, when I was at Godrich watching the ships come in. And a grown-up came up to me and he says, you realize that ship that's coming through the breakwater, it had to shut its engines off 2 miles away from shore. Then it was guided in by the tugboats. The tugboats are small, nimble craft. They can move, thrust forwards, backwards, sideways, very nimble, providing the local direction to bring the ship home safely to harbor. That's the best way, best analogy after about a month of this, trying to run this through my brain and process it and listen to everybody from all sides. That's the best way, analogy I can put this. And the best, most effective way, local CAs are the tugboat, in my mind. And I think if we lose the tugboat, then the ship is in danger. So that's the best way I can summarize it. So with that, I will read out that the motion to the direction on the report is that the board of directors receive the report for information as presented by Tracy Annette, our general manager, for item 8.2. Moved by Anna, second by Tom. Further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? That's carried unanimously. Okay. Now, expressed a desire to take further action and direction. So I need to, there's two ways that this can be done according to our procedural bylaw. If a new motion is proposed, not as an amendment, but a new separate motion, there are two options. First option is to put this on the agenda for the next meeting, which right now is tentatively scheduled for December 16th, or ask for a motion to dispense with the notice requirement. There would be no debate on that motion. The motion to dispense with the notice requirement would have to pass by a 2/3 majority, and then call for, and then if that's the wish of the board, then we can entertain motions. And at that time, I would call for movers and seconders of any motions that the board wishes to consider. So,
Chair will make a motion that the rules be, what the second option was?
Dispense.
Oh, sorry.
so I'll read this out then. Ask for a motion to dispense with the notice requirement wherein there's no debate, and such a motion would have to pass by 2/3 majority. So Brian, you wish to make that motion? Anna, you wish to second? Okay, there's no debate on that. So I'll ask the clerk to read out the motion one more time, please.
Motion is to dispense with the notice of requirement.
Okay, everyone has heard the motion. I'll check for members online. You have heard the motion. Please confirm.
Yes, Chair, just a moment, please. I'm a little slow at this. So the motion that Brian has put forward, tell me about that again, because I was actually going to support the first motion that we move this to the next meeting. But so I'm curious about the second one. I really don't understand it. So please explain it again.
Yeah, I'll repeat it again. So according to our procedural bylaw, when a situation arises where a new motion is proposed, okay, we've dealt with the original report. We've moved to accept that report. Now, any business that the board so wishes to have arise out of that report, that requires a new motion. So our procedural bylaw is such that either,
Just a point of order, Mr. Chair.
okay,
I believe that's to do with a new item that's not on the agenda. This was on the agenda, so the motion is coming out of the item that's on the agenda.
Is this arising from?
This is the report. So I don't know if, I'm fine with doing it this way of no motion, but,
I'll refer the question to the clerk.
Chair, sorry. I'm sorry. I'd like to move this to the next meeting. Can I do that? I know there's a motion on the floor, but can I move it?
it's not a motion.
I'm going to refer the original question to the clerk. I'm going to refer the question to the clerk on how we deal with motions that arise from discussion.
My understanding is that any new motion, whether it's coming out of a report or not, a new motion that is not coming out as an amendment to a current
Wasn't amendment.
A current recommendation, so because this is
Okay.
a new one, might as well just deal it
Yeah.
with
Should've made
it, the
amendment.
2/3 majority,
Amendment.
or you could do with an amendment to the
the motion
recommendation.
was already passed.
We didn't,
This
there you go, so.
Yeah.
Motion has already passed. And the current motion on the floor is to dispense with the notice of requirement, which has no debate, and that is currently on the floor, so it's.
Are we clear?
Thank you.
All right, so I'll ask the clerk one more time to read the motion that's been put on the floor.
Motion currently on the floor is the motion to dispense with the notice of requirement.
Okay, that was moved by Brian and seconded by
Anna.
Anna. Okay. We've heard the motion. There is no debate, so I'll call the question. All those in favor of that motion, raise your hand. Opposed? We have a 2/3 majority. The motion is adopted. So the floor is open to present motions to provide action or direction on the report that was presented. Skylar, go ahead, please.
Thank you. I'd like to move that we approve this proposed motion that was circulated, as well as direct staff to circulate a letter to all member municipalities and local Indigenous communities in regards to the economic and legal risks of this new legislation. And you can add other risks, but I think legal and economic are probably the ones people care about the most.
Okay, so just to be sure that I'm hearing you correctly, Skylar, you wish to adopt the proposed motion that was circulated to the board at the start of the meeting. And you also wish to add a letter circulated to the local municipalities within the Upper Thames watershed and the local Indigenous communities within the Upper Thames watershed. The letter will focus on the economic and the legal ramifications.
This can include other.
Pardon?
It can include other.
Like governance.
Exclusive, but I think those are things that should be first mentioned.
And other. Okay. My question to the clerk is, has the members online, have they received this?
They saw it through the presentation material here.
Okay.
It's the same language. We just printed it out on one page.
The members online are aware?
So this is the sample motion then. That's what we're talking about again?
Yes.
And we're gonna vote on this right now. Is that right?
Yes, I
Here?
This one, and it continues on to.
Yeah, this motion that's in front of us, Chair, that's what we're voting on now?
We're voting on that motion. All right, so Skylar's motion includes this language. In addition to, or plus, the direction is to supply a letter, a separate letter. Correct, Skylar? Separate letter
Correct.
that's addressed to the member municipalities of the watershed of Upper Thames, member Indigenous communities within the watershed of Upper Thames. And the subject matter of that letter will discuss or will point out the economic and legal ramifications and other relevant ramifications of the proposed change by the province.
If I can provide a clarification, maybe just generalize that to the local Indigenous communities, because there isn't any specific.
So noted.
To help with that, I would suggest the First Nations
First Nations.
affected by this change, proposed change in geographic boundaries. Because it would go all the way to Walpole Line.
All right, so we have a motion by Skylar, seconder by George.
Chair, I'd like a recorded vote, please.
Okay, so noted. I'll ask the clerk to prepare us for a recorded vote. All right, we've heard the motion. We have a mover, seconder. Any discussion? Tom?
Sorry, I just, one minor point is that I think we should, as Brian alluded earlier, this may be a negotiation and that they're floating a balloon. And Ideally, something close to no changes would probably be preferable. But if at the very least, they look at dividing the Erie Basin into an east and west, because we don't actually go into Erie, we go into Lake St. Clair. Right, and a lot of the ones to the west do go into Lake St. Clair, which has completely different features than Lake Erie. And I think if you look at it from a capacities approach, they would achieve their goals of scale and scope without the added additional layers of bureaucracy and duplication.
And to your point, Tom, that's something like Tracy mentioned. The conservation executive, Mr. Bassett, he would, that would be part of the discussion that I would anticipate, at least I would anticipate, and I think Tracy would anticipate that what you mentioned, that would be a point of discussion with Mr. Bassett in the future, when that opportunity arises. Okay, any other questions or comments? Mark, go ahead.
I just want to make sure that municipal clerks would therefore take this sample motion and put it on the agendas of all the township councils and councils at their next meeting.
Well, the councils will ask for it.
Well, I think, your point, Mark.
Even if they receive it as information.
Maybe on correspondence.
As opposed to having a big debate in each township and municipality.
Well, yes, and I think perhaps it's incumbent on all of the board members to go back to your respective municipalities that you represent and ensure that the clerks have received the correspondence and ensure that they will include it on their agenda at their earliest opportunity, noting that the ERO comment deadline is December 22nd. So point taken, Mark, but I think there's a bit of a role for us to kind of help close the loop in that respect as well.
Just to assist staff, hopefully in what they craft for the municipalities. And again, I'm going back to what Essex Region Conservation Authority passed on November 19th, and the bottom of page 2 of 3. Really, I think outlines the importance to municipalities. One, it says actual full consultation with municipalities regarding both funding of the agency and the new potential regional conservation authority, but also importantly, maintaining a strong local voice that's both accountable to the ratepayer and able to provide transparent and timely responses to inquiries, applications, and programs. That's what we're all concerned about. And hopefully that at a municipal level is what is also of concern. And I've heard that from members today. So let's make it as clear as possible why we think the municipalities need to be aware of this and hopefully take some action on it.
So noted. Thank you, Sandy. Anything further? Paul?
Yeah, to go back to Brian's point from an hour or so ago, but we need to get the municipalities on board with this. We saw how much the province cared about the Conservation Authority's input. I think it had 1 hour advance notice before the press conference. So it's anything we can do, including a motion like this, and my plan would be make sure that this motion, if it's passed, gets on the agenda, along with a motion from Zora opposing this based on one of the motions that we've had forwarded to us. As Brian and other speakers have said, we need the municipalities behind us to have any impact on not that we're against forming the agency, that we're against the huge amalgamation that's proposed here.
No, I'm against it.
What's that?
Against the agency, 100%.
Okay.
Clear.
Yeah. That's what, yeah, I think that comes down to what we think we can influence.
Okay, thanks, Paul. Anything further? Last call. Okay. It's time to call the question, and I'll turn it over to the clerk to handle the recorded vote.
Jean Coles. Jim Craigmile.
Support.
Peter Cuddy.
Opposed?
Skylar Frank.
Support.
Tom Heeman,
Support.
Hopkins,
Yes.
Sandy Levin,
Yes.
Hugh McDermott,
Yes.
Paul Mitchell,
Yes.
Harsh Najjar,
Support?
Brian Petrie,
Yes.
Mark Schottenberg,
Yes.
George Way,
Yes.
Scotty Zaire,
Yes.
Dean Chantowski.
Support. I'll ask the clerk to please confirm the outcome of the vote. Vote is carried. Thank you. I believe that concludes item file number 8.2 our agenda. So we will move that to section 5, administrative business, approval of the minutes of the previous meeting from October 28th. Get back on the regular flow, such as it is.
I'll move it.
Once I find it. Okay, Sandy, a motion to approve, yeah, I'll read the resolution first, that the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority Board of Directors approved Board of Directors minutes dated October 28th, 2025, and including any closed session minutes. Sandy moves that, seconded by Mark. Discussion, all the question, all those in favor? Carried, you. Item 5.2, business arising from those minutes. I have nothing here listed, but I'll give the members one more opportunity. Seeing none, moving on. Item 5.3, correspondence. We have a minister's letter dealing with source water protection, dated November 14th, 2025, addressed to myself and Tracy. Ministry is a pleasure to inform you that the ministry has completed the review of the Thames Sydenham and Region Source Protection Plan, Volume 3, and associated Upper Thames River, Lower Thames Valley, and St. Clair Region Assessment Reports for proposed changes related to the Lambton area water supply drinking water system, and to ensure broader updates are incorporated to align with the 2021 technical rules under the Clean Water Act of 2006. The ministry letter goes on to say that the minister approves the amendments pursuant to Section 34 of the Clean Water Act. The amendments will take effect on the day the notice of this decision is posted in Ontario's Environmental Registry. Ministry goes on to say that he appreciates the dedication of local municipalities, Source Protection Authority, and Source Protection Committee, as well as their partners and stakeholders for their work and contributions to these amendments, which ensure that the municipal drinking water sources continue to be protected. Our strong protection framework will continue to help ensure Ontario's drinking water is held to high safety standards, and that sources of drinking water in the province are protected from contamination and depletion for future generations. Sincerely, Todd McCarthy, Minister of Environment, Conservation, and Parks. I don't know if there's anything else to add to that, Tracy? No. Sandy, go ahead, please.
As your representative on the Source Water Protection Committee, it was discussed. But also, it'll be interesting to see what the changes in geographic boundaries are going to do to source water protection committees and their role and where they have jurisdiction. Again, another complexity of the change that didn't seem to get addressed in the legislation, but somewhere in the regulation, somebody's got to be talking about it. Because as I understand it from Tracy, whereas it's the source water protection is within, for us, is within Lake Erie. There are some areas of the province where it splits between the different regions, so that'll be interesting. And the question is, how's the funding? Who do those staff work for, and all that other fun stuff? The devil's in the details that somebody writing the legislation doesn't get.
Okay, thanks, Sandy, for those comments. And for sharing that information, with the Source Water Protection Group. I think you just received that for information then. We need a mover and seconder to receive that. Okay, we do. All right, yeah, motion is to receive the source water protection letter from Minister McCarthy as presented. Moved by Paul, seconder. Jim, discussion. Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? It's carried. You. All right, section 6, reports for consideration, 6.1.
Okay.
We're good?
We added those two letters.
Oh, yeah, sorry, yeah,
Correspondence.
yeah, my apologies. Can we, can we bring those up then? Okay, the first is from the Essex Region Conservation Authority. And the second was from Stormont, Dundas and Glengarry. Both responding to proposed changes under Bill 68.
Move to proceed.
We remove those, second by Brian. Any discussion? Correspondence, Brian?
Real quick, I think that, again, it doesn't take, the same sentiment is again and again and again. I don't know what's gonna happen with it, but I think it's good that, there's been a lot of work and I can see people have put a lot of time and effort, probably way too much than they've supposed to, should have had to, but, it's happy to support any of those things going forward.
Say that again, Brian, at the end there, you're
Just happy to support anything that those messages that are coming forward, so it all adds to the collective of what's I've said, and if anything's gonna happen to change things, it's gotta be a collective push. Not from CAs, because they're not gonna listen to CAs.
Thank you. I thought I heard maybe a direction in there, but no, it's just a comment. All right. Okay, so we have those two additional pieces of correspondence. I guess that were included as well. So did we have a mover and seconder to accept those? We did. Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor of receiving those? Opposed, if any, it's carried. Okay, thank you. All right, now we can move to section 6, reports for consideration. First one is 6.1, meeting dates and committee meetings. I'll give this to Tracy to present that report.
Yes, thank you, Chair, through you. Just recognizing so much changing with the province, I felt it necessary to add a December meeting to ensure that we have an opportunity to regroup and provide any updates or submitting comments to the ERO and fulsome comments, I should say. We've just added this as a proposed change along with the attachment, which is the meeting schedule for next year, including reset dates for finance and audit, as well as hearings committee. Recognizing that it's always a unique time when we have the election in January, but at least getting those on the calendars early so they can be amended if necessary once the meetings are selected.
Thanks, Tracy. Any questions for Tracy? Seeing, George.
It is an election year. Tuesday, November the 3rd will be my last council meeting that day, so I should and meeting. I don't know what other members here meet on the first Tuesday of the month.
We checked and City of London doesn't conflict with any of this.
I don't know if other municipalities meet the first Tuesday every month.
Through the chair, I know we were trying to avoid the day after the election, so
Yeah,
and not having that October date, so punching it back, but I think Michelle did a quick scan of what we could see posted online, but
Not all next year. The schedules are not up, so we did have a little trouble.
yeah.
And so I apologize.
Are you worried you're not gonna win?
Um,
Pessimism.
What's that?
You're not allowed to leave.
No, you
Keep
won't.
you
If I gotta stay, you gotta stay.
Brothers by a different mother. So I would recommend that, we leave the November date in as proposed. But at the call of the chair, that could be adjusted accordingly once more information comes to light on 2026 schedules from the municipalities. Is that fair, George?
That's fine.
Mark?
I'm just curious as to why the hearing committee schedule is only for 4 different dates in the year. For example, if somebody's slightly too late to get ready for January 27th, as far as the hearing goes with our committee, they have to wait till the end of May to be able to have the same hearing, or they'd be changed and reestablished to the second meeting, like after the February, after a March meeting.
Yes, I can through the chair. That schedule is just kind of a placeholder. The committee has been very open to polling the committee members and establishing a hearing when one is known or needs to be heard earlier. Just trying to set some dates. Schedule. Provide some direction to staff as well. So they can prepare potential hearings.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments? All right. Recommendation that the board amends the 2025 meeting schedule to add a December Board of Directors meeting on December 16th, 2025. That the board approves the attached 2026 Board of Directors meeting schedule, and that the board approves the attached 2026 committee meeting schedules pending discussion and approval of 2026 committees elected at the January election. Move your seconder, please. Moved by Hugh, second by Tom. Okay, any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, if any, is carried. Thank you. All right, moving on to 6.2. We have the regulated area map update and transition protocol submitted from the Ward Regulations Coordinator and Aaron Dolmage, as a mapping communications and marketing specialist. Who was here, and he was more than happy to introduce the report to the board. Go ahead, Bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through to you. The regulated area map update and transition protocol has been developed to ensure that we're in compliance with the regulatory requirements. So in the new regulation in 2024, there are regulated area map update requirements that we have to make sure we're compliant with. One of the key changes in the new reg was that when significant updates are resulted from new information, that we're required to notify the public stakeholders and the municipalities. And there are certain posting requirements that have to happen before it's considered and approved by the board of directors. So this protocol has been developed to outline how that process will go forward. What we define as significant updates, because we didn't get a definition in the regulations, so we have to define that ourselves. And that information has been influenced by recent court decisions, ensure that we're transparent and that landowners are aware of when their properties affected. It also carries on with determining when, what is the best information that staff use to inform decision making. At what stage of that draft data do we rely on through public engagement to inform decisions? So we've clearly outlined that out through the transition protocol. Similarly to what other CAs have developed as best practices prior to the new reg, and again, in consideration of those recent court decisions. So this puts us in a position to better align and ensure we're compliant with the reg and give staff the direction and guidance that's needed when we're doing it. The only other point I would note to the delegation this morning, we did confirm through our communications plans, LDI is listed as a stakeholder that'll be notified, and we're more than happy to continue conversations to ensure that they are notified at those times when that information is being considered. I'm happy to answer any other questions that clearly members can as well.
Good, thank you, Joe. Members, questions, speakers list, starting with Sandy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and congratulations to staff. And this was laid out really nicely and understandably, so thank you. Couple of questions. One is, Just so I'm understanding Ontario Regulation 41/24, which requires us to annually review the maps, determine any updates, and then report them. That's the process that we're involved in now, that's also on our agenda in terms of the mapping exercise. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair, if I understand the question correctly, yes, we're required to review annually to determine if updates are required, and if they are, we have to update them promptly. And then the next piece of that is if it's a significant update, that requires public engagement and board. So there are sections in that act that talk about text prevails. So if there's conflicts between our mapping and text, the text prevails. If they don't meet the definition of significant updates, then staff can adjust that boundary adjustment with individual landowners that way. And I believe tying to the Thames River update, that's been deemed a significant update, and it's gone through the public engagement process and notification considered to the board before it has its effect in law.
Is my interpretation of the regulation that any significant changes have to come to this board in for passage annually?
Not necessarily annually, at a minimum annually, but there will be times there may be situations we'll bring it forward more opportunities than annually. But at a minimum, once a year, updates have to be considered by the board.
All right. The other question had to do with this controversy, I guess, around significant. As you mentioned in your presentation, the province hasn't defined it. Traditionally, legislation doesn't have definitions like that in regulations anyway, because it's a list that may have examples, but it's not a complete list. So is there something in the legislation or regulations that put the onus on this and any other conservation authority for a definition?
I think so.
They're not questions of staff for.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I can attempt to answer that question as well. I think ultimately, when it comes to terms like that, first we look to the regulation and then we look to the act. If the definitions aren't there, then we may go to things like the provincial planning statement or the technical guides. But in all of those scenarios, there's no definition. So I think that's where it then has to go through our policy documents approved by the board, what we define that to be. And like I said, it's influenced by some other decisions and some best practices that other CAs have. And as well, I think from the consultation side, the regulation actually speaks to that the engagement process will be deemed as the authority deems advisable. So it gives us the power to deem what form of consultation will happen. And that's why this document also expands in terms of this. So in this case, there's no definition of significant updates across all of the typical resources we rely on. So that's where we're making the interpretation ourselves to present to the board for approval. The only other piece of my presentation that I missed is that this has been vetted through Grant Inglis, our solicitor. So it has had legal review.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other questions? Who's online? I guess maybe a follow-up, Joe, question I have, the definition of significant being that it's not written down anywhere. Is this something in the province's goal for consistency? Is this something that they are even going to weigh in on? Because I'm thinking about 300, the freeboard number was not defined on the flood level. This seems to me to be the same slice out of the same loaf of bread here.
Yeah, and through you, Mr. Chair, I'm not aware of the province will be exploring that, but certainly some of those recent court decisions have drawn a lot of attention to helping us define that. That's something that Conservation Ontario is looking at as well, that we've been having discussions with to try and get some form of consistency across the province. I'd also note that, sometimes court decisions are also appealed. So if there's changes in those court decisions, this document may be bringing it back to this authority with some minor amendments to rectify, to consider case law. But no, I don't believe the province is looking at providing a definition.
So I guess my supplemental, Joe, then is until such time, it is the discretion of the individual conservation authorities through the process that you mentioned to make these determinations.
I think so, yes.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, all right. So the recommendation is that the Board of Directors approves the regulated area map update and transition protocol as presented. Moved by Brian, seconded by Scotty. Discussion, Brian?
I think it's another piece of the puzzle, sadly, again, if things happen, it won't matter anyway, but it's one of those ones where this could move development faster, clarity to those working on what it is. And again, when there's definitions that, you know, if there's a question on definition, it can be worked out over time, if it's not a clear one given. But I think that's where education comes in. I think that's where the conversations come afterwards of, I would encourage, you know, not only LDI, but other stakeholders to have those discussions, the staff to have those discussions, to try to figure out that common meaning first. So going forward, there is that clarity on anything that is not 100% clear. Again, this was brought forward by the province through regulations. So, and now we have some more clarity through case law. Those things always happen, but the more, if there is any questions, and I appreciate Mr. Wallace bringing those forward, you know, having those conversations again, that clarity up front, so everybody's on an equal footing, creates a lot of clarity down the road. Better if it's written down, and we can always adapt, amend this as it goes forward to get that clarity as much as possible before we're swallowed by the whale.
Okay, thanks, Brian. Andy?
Yeah, sorry, Mr. Chair, I noticed that staff have included what this policy defines as significant updates on page 6 and 7 of the report, or 16, 17 of our agenda. So it seems pretty clear cut that it's significant stuff, large scale stuff. Not trivial nor subjective, really. I think it's as clear as it could be, rather than saying it's as clear as mud. It's pretty straightforward. I don't know, though, do you need any, I hate to say this, but do you need flexibility to say something like significant upgrades include, but not limited to? But I think you probably included that because we've talked about changes to legislation and other things. So off the top of my head, I don't think you need it, but question, you know, you're the people implementing this. Do you need that flexibility in the policy that we, so through you to Mr. Chair to staff?
Okay, staff, any further comment there?
Yeah, sure. I'm just trying to think of whether it's needed or not. And I guess my knee-jerk reaction is thinking that we want to be transparent in what we define as significant update, and with flexibility that may lose that transparency. Maybe not needed at this time, but certainly considered if, as we implement and run through the process, maybe we'll find a few things that may be helpful in the future. But I guess right now,
Okay.
Their response, I would say, is probably not needed.
In other words, keep it simple and straightforward.
I guess to add Sandy, my questions to Joe were, I guess, to that point, if there's a target, a number, please define the number so we can keep it simple and reach the target. That's my binary engineering logic, trying to thrust itself upon this scenario, whether it's the right way or not. But just if we knew, people knew, the stakeholders knew this is where we're going, then we get away from discussing where that place is and then focus on getting to the point to get a resolution on the issue. That's the reason, that was the reasoning for my question earlier, but your points are well taken. Anything else? There's no further discussion. I'll call the question. All those in favor of adopting the report? Opposed, if any? It's carried. Thank you. So we move to section 7, reports in camera. Sorry, I missed that. Keep going ahead. Speaking of trying to get to the target too quickly. 6.3, Thames River Regulated Area Map Update, City of London approval. We have a verbal update. The actual report is deferred to next meeting, so we have a verbal update from Jenna. Go ahead, please.
Well, through you, Chair, the board is aware that we have been in the process of updating the Thames River Regulated Area Mapping through the City of London, which we started consultation on last fall. the following. As per our last report to the board in September, we did move forward with posting the proposed mapping on our website October 17th for a 30-day notification period before bringing it, what we anticipated bringing to this meeting for board consideration and approval of that mapping. So through that 30-day consultation, we received several additional comments, including early last week, we received comments from the London Development Institute and their consulting engineers, MTE. So those comments were specifically technical comments related to the floodplain modeling and mapping aspect of our regulated area update. And our engineering staff here have not had a full opportunity to really review those comments in detail. And I think we want to try and address any outstanding technical concerns and comments before we move forward with bringing this forward for a recommendation of approval. So we have deferred until our next meeting, that map update and approval.
Okay, thanks, Jenna. Tracy, anything to add there?
Yeah, I would just clarify, I know the title, I had a question from someone about the City of London approval. No, this is just the City of London geographic area, not the city's approval, just to clarify that point. And I know we did say report deferred to next meeting. I think that will depend on the progress made by the engineers to undertake that review. As Jenna stated, we do want to make sure that we've had an opportunity to do a fulsome review and have any comments received, but certainly at a future meeting. Schedules will dictate what other items we have on the agenda as well.
Okay, thanks, Tracy. Questions? Any further questions on the presentation? Start with Sandy and then Brian.
Yeah, the presenter had talked about again, a desire to see it and comment on it before it comes to this board, which traditionally is kind of contrary to processes, but given the time this has been involved in, and the fact that we have a provincial regulation to comply with by doing an update annually. I hate to see this delayed and delayed and delayed. Is there an opportunity? If it doesn't, is there an opportunity for this to be shared with other group or groups before it comes to the board and shows up on the public agenda? I recognize it's not fair to us, but there's a major stakeholder who keeps involvement in this that delays things from happening and tends, I think sometimes being on site is helpful. Not always. But I'd like to hear an opinion from staff on this. I don't want to violate anything that's in a procedural bylaw, obviously, but is there an opportunity to reduce resistance?
Turn that question to staff.
Yeah, I'll start. I think again with LDI in particular, there is a working group, and Jenna can maybe touch base on some of the working group sessions that yeah, where there has been some discussion and separate meetings before bringing items forward. So Jenna, if you want to elaborate on that, I think scheduling has been a bit of a challenge in the last couple months.
Yeah, I think our meetings, our last few meetings with London Development Institute have been canceled. So we haven't had a meeting in some time with that group. It would have been nice to receive the comments earlier than this, but we posted on October 17th for a 30-day notification period. Those comments were provided within those 30 days. So that's the window that we provided. And I think given the nature of the comments that were received, we want to give it consideration before we bring the mapping update forward for approval.
Brian, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. Yeah, I think that, this is something that we've been working on for a long time. And I think that, whether we see it in December or January, but just because we see something on the agenda in December, if there's not enough, if there's feeling around the board, we can always defer that consideration to January, but it actually gives more time to have everybody have a look at it, especially when it's a big report. I think that's always sometimes helpful, is to have those other ones that have that more time to look over and make sure. And so I think that faster that we can have that information come to the board can decide when they want to deal with that information. But again, I think it is important that if it is what the board is going to consider, that it come out at the same time, that others, are we getting a request from other stakeholders, that if one stakeholder gets it, and then we consultation process. I think that it comes to the board sometime again, but I think that I'm certainly open to, if there is maybe it comes out and everybody's like, yeah, that's great. Okay, well, we're great. Maybe it doesn't, but then we could take those concerns into when we see that, and whether we consider it or not that time. And but I think that would be my purview, is that it comes to the board when staff is ready to bring it to the board, and then we can decide as a board what we're going to do with that based off the feedback we get from the public.
Okay, thanks, Brian. Tom, you're next.
Yeah, I think consultation is good. I think we also outlined a really good framework that we do this on an annual basis. So I think, to a certain instance, perfect is the enemy of the good. And if there are significant changes, again, this is a technical process. I don't know what value we are going to add as a board if there's no technical supporting documentation, right? So if there is some significant information that is made available, then we do have a mechanism on an annual and less than an annual basis to react appropriately. And I think that, not having compliance does have its own set of liabilities.
You're referring to non-compliance in terms of meeting a deadline, have our plan updated?
Yeah.
Okay.
Whether we do consolidate us.
And I didn't hear that, no. Okay, thanks, Tom. Anything else? Okay, so it's a verbal update. So I'll look for confirmation from the board to receive the verbal update as provided by staff on this agenda. Moved by you, second by George. Discussion. All in favor? Carrie, thank you. All right, now we move to item 7, reports of camera. We'll mover and a seconder. The board of directors adjourned to closed session in camera in accordance with section C12 of the UTRCA administrative bylaw to discuss personal matters about an identifiable individual and to discuss the plan or instruction to be applied to negotiations. Jean, second by Anna. All those in favor? Okay, we are adjourned to closed session at 11:52.
No, they won't be. I'll give it something.
Into self-confidence.
That board meeting at closed session. Thank you. Okay, we're back live. So he has another meeting now.
We'll try to do it best here.
Yeah, Harsh is jumping off and goes.
Yes, we're live, yes.
All right, so it's 12:48. The board is back in open session. So we had a rise and report. We had a closed session that dealt with administrative bylaw procedures, personal matters about an identifiable individual, and also planner instructions to be applied to negotiations. So from that, 7.1, personal matters about an identifiable individual, general manager's annual performance appraisal. The recommendation is that the board receives the report for information and that the board accepts the endorsement of the chair, vice chair with respect to the performance evaluation rating for the general manager. Moved by Brian, seconder. George. Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, it's carried. 7.2, plan or instruction to be applied to negotiations. Van Shaw Land Lease Program update. Staff provided a brief verbal update on the Van Shaw Land Lease Program. Looking for a mover and seconder to accept that verbal update. Moved by Paul, second by Hugh. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, it's carried. And then 7.3, litigation affecting the authority. Chair's notes, staff provided a brief verbal update on litigation affecting the authority. So mover and seconder to accept that verbal update as presented. Moved by Mark, second by Jim. All those in favor? It's carried. Okay, thank you. So now we're into section 8, reports for information. So we are at 8.1, and that is the planning and permitting service delivery review. So Jenna will introduce our consultants from Blackline to provide a presentation on that report, please.
Through you, Chair. Unfortunately, Blackline Consulting, who undertook our service delivery review, have been with us all morning, but had a conflicting meeting at 1 p.m. So they aren't able to give, they had a quick presentation they were going to provide, providing an overview of the review that was completed. And so they won't be able to provide that presentation, but we can look at whether it makes sense for them to come back to a future meeting. I guess, as my report sort of says, we undertook, we put this out to RFP last fall. And so over the past year, Blackline has been undertaking this review. I think it was quite thorough. They interviewed a lot of staff. They did job shadowing with several members of the planning and regulations department. And then they consulted with a lot of our partners. We consulted with municipalities. They consulted with the development industry, and they spoke to other conservation authorities around Ontario. I know there's been from certainly staff within our department, as well as others that are, protective of the authority, that this might cast us in a bad light. But I would say that that's the nature of this type of review. It isn't to highlight all of it. It's really to identify areas where, and I think there's always up. So I think they're a pretty good job of identifying some of the issues. Certainly, most of them are well known to staff in our department, and I think the recommendations are good. And we've got a good basis to move forward with an implementation plan based on those recommendations. So that is the next step, is that we'll be bringing forward a report on the implementation recommendations. Given the recent announcement we made, choose not to move forward with certain recommendations. I think I highlight that in my report. They outlined the need for a data management system to the tune of upwards of $250,000 to purchase some kind of system that we could use. I think we fully agree that that kind of system would be very helpful for our staff. But given the province's announcement that they're planning a provincial system that would be implemented by all conservation authorities, that may be something that we hold off on in terms of exploring options for that kind of data management system. But I think there's lots of other things that we can implement fairly quickly and move forward with. So that will be the next report that we bring back to this group.
Okay, thanks, Jenna. Brian, go ahead.
Due to the fact that the consultants are not available and that a number of them are on the board, I'd like to move that we defer consideration of item 8.1 future meeting.
So noted. Who would like to make a motion? You did, okay, seconder on that? Paul, okay, motion to defer, this report and presentation to future meetings, any further discussion? Sandy?
What I don't want that deferral to do. Well, two things. I'm assuming you want the consultants.
Yeah.
Okay, so. I mean, that would mean, in my mind, deferring it to December 16th. Have the consultants back. Do what I think Jenna did in 2 minutes, we'll do it in 20. But what's more important to me as a board member is the implementation of the recommendations. And what I'd like to see at that meeting is what staff. I want to see the implementation plan, at least an outline, including what the top priorities are. And that way we can track it as an ongoing item on Tracy's to-do list. And maybe we get a report every month, I don't know, but let's move on it, because I read the report. I've seen a lot of crappy consultants work. This is really good consultants work.
That's why I want to meet him.
Yeah, well, happy to meet them and you can hire them.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I mean, thank you to staff for doing this. Thank you for going through the exercise, which can be painful. And, you know, let's move on it. I agree 100%. Some of the stuff that the province is gonna make us do, like not today, and we don't have to worry about doing, putting in our own systems if the province is gonna do it for us. But there are some stuff, quick wins, that let's go. Let's not wait until December that we've received the report. I want to know what's going on right away. So I don't know if you need a part B to this deferral or not, but I think staff are aware that we're interested in seeing progress.
Yeah, I think I'll check with Tracy, but I think the intent was always to get this through the board as soon as possible. Unfortunately,
the city screwed us around.
Well,
I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that. I withdraw the comment, and you don't have to respond to the comment.
The process takes time, like you mentioned in your comments earlier, Sandy, it's not an easy process. So the process just, there's no clock to it, it just, whatever, you just gotta follow the steps. Whatever, so, but the intent was always to get this to the board as soon as possible. With time being of the essence, but not circumventing the steps that are required. So like, Jim, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Chair. After reading the report, it just brought to my attention, it was at the end of the last board meeting we had, I mentioned to the chair and Tracy that I had some extremely positive comments from staff about how quickly a response they got from the planning and permitting over the past 6 months, and how it was just a complete change around in what they were expecting. So they knew they got something, they were told some preliminary stuff, or we're trying to get information on X, Y, and Z and get back to you soon. So I think it's already taking place, some of the things in this report, and good for staff for, you know, advancing it.
Thanks, Jim. Paul, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with Sandy's comments. That was a really good report. I learned more about that department.
Sorry, just a point of order,
Have it
motion on the floor is defer, we'll have, if we could, like, we're gonna lose quorum.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, and so, right, it's to the motion to defer.
Yeah, okay, we'll reserve other comments until the actual presentation. So, so the motion is to defer the report till the next meeting date of December 16th. Been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, it's carried. Okay, 8.2, we've dealt with that. 8.3 hydro plant updates. Chris, you have the report for you. Chris available to answer any questions on that.
I'll move the recommendation.
Okay, Brian moves that the board of directors receive the report for information. Seconder. George, all those in favor? Carried, thank you. 8.4 administration and enforcement, section 28. Looks like all the permits were issued within the provincial timeline. Jen and Joe were able to answer any questions.
Joe has one clarification.
Thank you. If I may, through you, Mr. Chair, I just want to identify one inputting error on the actual Schedule 2 permits issued, but I thought I should just identify. So that's a spreadsheet that gets dumped out of our primary tracking spreadsheet and outlines all the permits issued. You may have noticed that there's two line items with permit 173-25. So one is referring to the Riverside Village subdivision in Zora, and the other one's referring to West London Dyke Phase 9 to 13. I just wanted to emphasize that the permit has not been issued for West London Dyke. That's actually permit 155. So there's two entries in that permit spreadsheet. And the applicable one is the Riverside Village subdivision in Zora for 173.25, and West London Dyke should be striked from that report. It was just simply an importing error that someone had issued in the date in the wrong line item. I just wanted to bring that to the attention of the board and you can see.
All right, thanks, Joe. Anything else? If not, recommendation that the board of directors receives this report for information. Moved by Paul, second by Scott. All those in favor? Carried. 8.5 project status update. Our usual reporting on internal affairs and projects within the organization. Any questions? See any? Tracy, any comments?
Yeah, I was just going to note, Mr. Chair, that at the last meeting, there was a request for a report back of a organizational chart and an HR report from company that on the status of any vacancies and any issues that we might be having with hiring. I got that planned for January, and certainly we can add to the report the implementation line recommendations to bring up at future meetings as well.
Okay, thanks, Tracy. Okay, if there's nothing further, motion that the board of directors receives this report for information. Moved by Tom, second by Jim. All those in favor? Carried, thank you. 8.4 Thames River November edition. Some great articles in here about protecting people and property, winter maintenance, landowner stewardship. Online tree store is open now, open until February 27th of next year. So encourage everyone to enroll in that if so interested. And other great information as usual in our into the current publication. A mover and a seconder that the board of directors receives a report for information. Tom and Hugh. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Reports, committee updates, nothing from finance and audits. Hearing committee, there was a short meeting of the hearing committee following an October board meeting wherein minutes were approved. There has been no other business. There was no other business on that agenda. Moving to section 10, notices of motion for next meeting. None have been received prior to. Don't see any being called now. Chair's comments. Thanks everyone for your cooperation and your participation and input today. We've had a very lengthy session, so I appreciate your patience and your dedication to the issues that we have been discussing and will continue to discuss. I'll turn it over to the members if they have any comments. Seeing none, general manager's comments.
Thank you, Dean. Just highlighting as well from the comments received today. I know staff already in early conversations of how pleased they were to hear your comments on these changes. We know it's going to be another time of change, and that always comes with some uneasiness, but I think recognizing how much you all care about this organization, you care about the municipality serve, and you care about the work that's being done in those local areas. So I'll just highlight that I appreciated the comments and the discussion. I know it's longer than typical, but this is probably extraordinary circumstances that we've ever had before with any of the past legislative changes. It has been changed. It has been bumpy, but this is probably the biggest hill yet. So With that, I do continue to reach out to staff and reassure staff that we are an agency that is fortunate to be the size that we are, the technical capabilities that we have. It might be a little bit different geographic area, but let's hope the province listens to what makes sense in these geographic regions, and what's being proposed is a little bit too big, encumbers them to truly undertake the work that they intend to be more expedient, to streamline services. I think we have to be more agile and more like that tugboat piloting the big ships in to our harbors. With that, thank you again.
Thanks, Tracy, and on behalf of the board, we appreciate as always your dedication and perseverance, especially since our last board meeting. There's a lot of things have happened in the last month, and we appreciate your diligence in keeping us apprised of those situations. Thank you very much. So with that, we've covered all of our agenda items for today. Our next meeting will be December 16th, 2025 at 9:30 a.m. And I will call adjournment at 1:05 p.m. You and seconder, Brian, all in favor? We're adjourned. Thank you.